Well, hello there to all you Filipinars listeners and followers. It's time again for Filipinars. And as you know, Filipinars is brought to you by the PNANV, or the Philippine Nurses Association of Nevada, in collaboration with PHLV Radio. So we hope you are all well and keeping cool in this summer. Thank you for joining us today. So today, we are going to talk about grants. So a grant is a quantity of money given by a government, an organization, or an individual for a specific purpose. And not like a loan, it does not have to be paid back. So grants are often awarded to support projects and initiatives that align with the objectives of the funding body, and it is aimed in achieving their policy outcomes. So they can be provided to various applicants, including individuals, businesses, and nonprofit organizations for the implementation of their projects. However, the application and the process of successfully obtaining a grant is very tedious and complicated. So today, we have invited the Director of Partnerships and Engagements of the Nevada GrantLab. So please welcome Ms. Divya Narala.
Thank you, Doris. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, gosh.
Definitely interested in talking a little bit more about grants, but also generally about our nonprofit community in Southern Nevada, too.
Of course, that's great. And Divya and I go way back, right? Even
way back.
Before you had a kid.
Oh, yes. Before both kids, a couple
Yes.
jobs ago.
Yeah,
Lots of
you're
different
right.
community work. Yep.
So Ms. Divya Narala here immigrated from India with her family at the age of 11 and has called Nevada home for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Almost.
She's a graduate of the University of Nevada in Reno, UNR. And she launched her career as an AmeriCorps Vista member with the Clark County Social Services, where she facilitated regional collaboration among Southern Nevada's homeless services stakeholders. Yeah. Wow. Her dedication to social impact deepened through her work as an intensive case manager at a Las Vegas-based nonprofit supporting individuals and who are experiencing chronic homelessness. So this experience has laid the foundation for her to transition to public service and policy. And she also went to serve at the Nevada legislature as an attaché to the late Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, and later on as the Assembly Education Committee manager. And most recently, you served as a district director for Congressman Stephen Horsford, right?
Yeah.
So she's got a lot going on, and
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And now she is working for the GrantLab. So
Yeah,
welcome.
Nevada GrantLab. Yep. Thank
Do you have anything to add to that? I'm sure you do, but
I think you've summed up my past 20 years pretty appropriately in like 45 seconds. So
45 seconds.
Thanks for the summary of my life.
Okay.
I'm also a graduate of UNLV, so
Oh, yeah.
my heart is equally divided between the South and the North, both institutions, both communities.
that's where you got your MBA, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
I got my biology degree from UNR, and then I got my MBA from UNLV.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so North and South. Here you go. Okay, so Divya, we have a lot of questions for you. So why are grants needed?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think in your intro you mentioned grants act as an avenue for nonprofit organizations, for governments, for community serving institutions, including our institutions of higher education,
Yes.
to be able to offer programs and initiatives that meet a public good. Oftentimes, depending on the source of the grant, those dollars either are coming from taxpayers like you and me, who are sending those dollars either to our federal government, to state and local governments, and they're repurposing those dollars to make sure the community is able to access services and resources that they need to access to thrive, right? And so grants serve as a really important avenue for organizations to do the good work in the community.
Yeah, that's true. So what are some of the types of grants in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start more on the macro national level and with the most complicated version of grants too. So, you know, what I said earlier, when we pay federal taxes, they go to Washington, D.C. Our federal government decides what types of programs and initiatives they want to fund at the national level. And then they want to make sure additional dollars flow down to state, local governments, other nonprofit organizations so that there's more direct impact. Historically, federal grants have served as like the bedrock funding for nonprofit organizations to be able to have more of a long-standing opportunity to offer different types of programming. So that's federal government is one source. We also have our state government. Each individual department has grants as it relates to the roles and responsibility of that department. For instance, you know, if you have the Nevada Housing Division, they're putting out grants that are primarily geared towards the housing community. So typically organizations that serve in that sector are eligible to apply for those grant sources. We also have local governments, right? Clark County, City of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, etc. So government institutions at the federal, state, local levels are one source of those types of funding. You also have corporations, your MGMs of the world, your Wynn Resorts of the world, Caesars Entertainment. They're corporations who have really, really big operations in communities, and they have a vested interest to give back to the community and help create that quality of life, not only for, you know, for the employees that work within those institutions, but for community members that are going in and out of those facilities as well. And then you have foundations, private foundations. These are, you know, some of them are high net worth individuals, and similarly, they want to make sure they leave an impact in the community, and part of their legacy lives on through the grant making process as well.
Okay, yeah, so that's good. There's stuff in the federal level, the state level, local governments, foundations, and different individuals, maybe?
Yeah, even individuals. Yeah. Individuals are often donating small dollar donations, or, you know, if they have the means and come from an affluent background, they're able to support their favorite nonprofits in the community to champion different causes that are important to them.
Yeah, is there like a place where we can avail of what grants are there in these different, you know, types of grants? Because the only thing that really gets into my email is the announcement of the grants that are available from Senator Jackie Rosen. That's all I know.
Yeah, their team does a really good job of compiling different type of grant opportunities that are available in the community. Nevada GrantLab, we're trying to make that exactly to address your question. Making sure organizations have equitable access to information, and if they have a great program that they feel is the right fit to meet the funders' objectives and priorities, they can opt to submit a proposal. So there are a couple of ways that we at GrantLab are trying to champion that work forward. One is we have our private grants guide that we actually just released last week. So we polled about 50 different funders locally in the community in this particular region in Southern Nevada to better understand what types of services are they funding, what type of populations are they funding, how much are they giving, what are their giving timelines and cycles, etc., to be able to produce an actual document that folks can access for free on our website.
That's good. Since you're already talking about the GrantLab, your organization helps in the grant process, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what the GrantLab actually does, you know, on top of what you already said?
Yeah,
so
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, grants are a part of our work, and that's core to what we do. But Nevada GrantLab actually started 5 years ago in the middle of COVID.
COVID?
Yep. If you remember what was happening around that time, as nonprofits were stepping up into those shoes of filling the gaps, finding those solutions, being very nimble and flexible. And at the same time, our federal government prioritized sending resources to states and local governments so that they can deploy them to nonprofits to meet the community needs, right?
Yes.
However, Nevada has had a legacy problem of accessing federal funds because we don't have enough grant writers in the market. We don't have enough professionals who understand the complex federal grants work. So when we started in 2020, our focus was to make sure we're serving nonprofits. So we don't have any direct programs ourselves. Our clients are nonprofits and government institutions thereby, because governments and nonprofits are very intertwined partners in the work. If you think about the types of programs that government wants to do, they hire nonprofits to do that work by way of grants, right?
Wow. Yes.
Technically, it's not. Yep, it's not exactly your Department of Health and Human Services. You come from the healthcare background. It's not the government institution that is out there providing, vaccines and health information, etc. They're likely working with a nonprofit to help deliver on that work. And so in 2020, when we had a massive infusion of federal dollars coming into our state, there was a pretty big opportunity for our organization to step in to fill a gap where we're trying to train nonprofits on how to maximize their ability to stretch the dollar further. They're really great at, first and foremost, we already have a great nonprofit sector, folks that lead with compassion and understanding and skills that deliver in different roles that they hold. But we saw a need to also add more opportunities for the sector to learn, which is why we started with our capacity building program right from the get-go. So when we started, we knew there were two things that we wanted to address at that time. A, help our community write for federal grants and quickly, and B, make sure folks know how to manage those grants, right?
Yes.
It's not important to just help people write grants. It's incredibly important to help them understand the compliance, the requirements, the laws and regulations, because these grant dollars come with lots and lots of restrictions.
Because they're public dollars. Pay them back, but they have restrictions,
Absolutely.
right?
It's not free money. People have the misconception that grants are just free money. In fact, you have to go through a lot of hoops, to even be eligible for grants, let alone go back to the same funder and ask for similar amount of funding, because you have to prove that these dollars are being used for the intended purposes and there's no misuse of those dollars.
Yeah, you know what? I remember when I was during COVID time, because I was still the president of the PNANV, and somebody actually called me and said, hey, you may be able to avail yourself of a grant. So, but the one thing that they told us was you have to be part of a national organization. And at the time, we were not part of the national organization. So we lost out on that one.
Yeah, most of the nonprofits that I'm specifically talking about are 501c3 organizations, right? There are different types of nonprofits, but ones that are often on the front lines delivering direct services, they are your 501c3s, which have a tax exemption associated with the work that they do. And so a lot of the grants are primarily targeted towards the 501c3 entities.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like I said, it's very complicated. So,
it is. Yeah. Sorry, I did not complete my response about what we do at Nevada GrantLab.
Yeah,
so
go ahead,
capacity building is still a really big part of our core identity and markers of an organization. We do help nonprofit partners write for federal and national foundation grants, and we can actually help them write the whole application if they're the right partner, right? And in the event that we're not able to help them write, we'll actually help them. We'll teach them how to write those grants. So if we can't provide the hands-on assistance, we at least have a learning opportunity for folks to better understand how to navigate those waters on their own. We also have a bridge program between the learning and the grants. It's the technical assistance work. Usually it's directed towards nonprofit organizations themselves, where, you know, maybe they're trying to have a stronger internal infrastructure for the organization to be able to opt for those federal funds. To be eligible for federal grants, you have to go through many different steps and already have proven outcomes. The federal government does not take chances or guesses on who they're granting funds to. They want to know with certainty, with almost 100% certainty, that these funds are actually being used for the right purposes by the right organizations who have a proven track record of doing this work in their own communities. So I often compare federal grants to like a marathon. You have to do your 1Ks, your 5Ks, your 10Ks before you think about running a marathon, right? And that's where your other sources of funds come in. Your local governments, your private foundations, your state agencies, they have a slightly looser restrictions because those are more locally controlled dollars. So you have to have that level of training to be able to use those dollars for you to eventually opt for a federal grant. And then we have the fourth program called Building the Movement program. That's where I live within the organization. That's the data, policy, and advocacy work, and then increasingly our community collaboration work. Oftentimes we hear from funders and other policymakers that it just feels like we have a lot of nonprofits that are doing the same work.
It's true. True.
We have... Since I'm talking about data, we have around 15,000 nonprofits that are registered in the state of Nevada.
15,000?
15,000 nonprofits.
Wow.
Take a random guess as to how many of them have at least $1 in their bank account and one full-time employee. We did an actual deep dive into this data in 2023, so I have a number for you.
Oh my goodness.
Of the 15,000, how many of them do you think have at least $1 in their bank account and one full-time employee?
Probably half, right? More than
Far
half?
less than half. 650, less than 650 nonprofits statewide.
Wow.
Statewide. There are 15,000 nonprofits that are registered, and less than 650 of them have the resources to actually say they're part of a social safety net.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So you're probably talking about, I don't know, there's probably tons of homelessness, nonprofits, a lot of healthcare.
The range is pretty vast. Nonprofits occupy every single segment of our community, from arts and culture organizations to environmental organizations to education, healthcare, housing, homelessness. You think about a topic, there's a nonprofit out there that's working to address a need that government is likely not able to step into.
How about education and media?
Media. Absolutely.
Media is
Vegas PBS, that's a nonprofit. Vegas PBS is a nonprofit.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
So we have a lot, Nevada Independent, right? Like all of the institutions are actually nonprofit institutions.
Yeah, and the funding has gone down too for the Nevada Independent, I believe. So it's really a big challenge. Thank you for that information. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So what are the advantages of grants?
Yeah, part of what we've been talking about. The advantage of a grant is for organizations to step into the role of filling a gap. Yeah. At the end of the day, government exists to take care of people that it's serving, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're bound by restrictions and red tape. So they identify partners like nonprofits to help deliver those services. And grants are advantages, and there's an advantage to opting for grants because it's not a loan. You don't have to repay because those dollars are going for public benefit. And ultimately, they need to be used for public benefits like programs and initiatives and et cetera. So there's a lot of utility for grants, but with anything in life, there are pros and cons with everything that you opt for.
What are the disadvantages? Let me say.
The amount of hoops nonprofits have to go through to access grants is insane.
Insane. Wow.
And think about an executive, right? Unlike a business where you're charging people for money, or where you're charging people money to render a certain service, within the nonprofit infrastructure, you're not able to charge people because you're actually addressing low. You can charge people, but most of the times you're working with folks that don't have the means, that are literally living off of $15,000-$20,000 a year, right? They don't have the means to be able to pay for those services. So you offset the cost by procuring grants, donations, etc. And with the amount of trust that funders put in nonprofits, also comes with lots of obligations and restrictions. Most funders have restrictions on what those funds can be used for. So I'll just use, I don't know, the Raiders as an example. They're a very charitable organization, but they have priorities. They want to make sure they're supporting nonprofit organizations that work with youth in the healthcare space, in health and wellness, because that ties into the core of who they are. And so it limits how many organizations are eligible for those funds. So there are eligibility requirements, right? Maybe that's a pro and a con, depending on who you ask. There's also the compliance work. You have to report out on how you were spending those dollars. How many people did you serve? What was the impact? So that if you're going to go back to that funder again, they want to know that there's a pretty good return on investment for those grants. So there's pros and cons to opting for grants, but it's part of the process.
Oh my goodness gracious. So you've already talked about, what... Are there some specific grants that are sought after most in Nevada?
It really depends. All funders have different priorities, right? All funders. We have a pretty big nonprofit infrastructure in the housing and homelessness sector, education, community, conservation, etc. So there are funding pots available based off of the issue areas that organizations are championing forward, and or the different types of populations that they're serving, right? Some organizations exclusively serve seniors, like Helping Hands of Vegas Valley, or others, or some only serve youth and young adults, some only serve women. Like there are priorities that organizations have, and they're always identifying funders who align with those priorities, and vice versa. So the range is really, really vast across the board.
It's very vast, right? And like you said, federal grants are so complex. And so what is the actual process of, applying for a grant?
Are we talking about federal grant or just any grant in general?
Any grant. I mean, they probably have sort of like the similar, right?
Similar process for sure, but varies a little bit in terms of the amount of complexity and effort that you have to put into it.
What's the most complex? Federal?
Hands down, federal grants. Hands down. Because sometimes, for a variety of reasons, federal grants almost automatically encourage nonprofits to partner with one another, leverage each other's talents and resources. Oftentimes there is a match requirement. So if you're applying for $100,000, depending on how they release their notice of funding availability. So they do like a big announcement, right, to the country, let's just say on the federal landscape. And they'll say, okay, as part of this notice, here are the things that we're looking for. Here's who's eligible. Here are how many awards we want to make. And here's the award ceiling and the award floor, right? Like the top end and the low end.
Right.
And then like another 100 pages of instructions for you to look through. It's insane. It's insanely complicated, which is why federal grants aren't really an answer for everybody out there. They're really a way for the organizations that have more of the back-end infrastructure to look at those federal grants as an opportunity to fund their work in the community.
So less complicated the states and
it's a little bit less complicated. Yeah.
Okay.
If the source is still federal funds, you still have a different level of oversight because most of the grants are aligned to federal law. So there are actual laws on the book that organizations have to make sure that they're following if they're opting for these federal grants, which is why we spend a lot of time at GrantLab with our capacity building program, making sure folks understand what the complexities of federal grants are. It's important, but don't step into this world if you don't understand the complexities.
The complexities. Okay. So what about foundations and individual grants? Are those less complicated?
Way less complicated. They're a lot more local. So you actually have, many of our organizations have relationships with organizations. So organizations know local entities and the work that they're doing in the community, which then opens them up. Sometimes the funder has to invite you to apply. Right. Other times, it's open to the whole community based off of their eligibility requirements. But they're working with a smaller institution. If it's one corporation, usually the employees of the corporation have a board. They intake the applications. They review it. There's a lot more autonomy in the way those dollars are funded, and quite a bit less in terms of like oversight or that. There's still accountability, just not as much oversight with the corporation and foundation dollars.
Yeah, we recently had here at the podcast the two academic scholars, Mark Pat and Constancia Arnaldo, who have been awarded a grant by the Mellon Foundation.
Mellon Foundation, that's right. So they're a national foundation.
Are they national?
They're a national organization. And they have different priorities. Mark and
Constancio, right?
Yeah, and Constancio. They work in the culture and arts, like cultural preservation space, and they have found a funder that likely had a notice of funding availability at some point, and they put in an application because it aligned with the priorities of the funder and what they were doing at UNLV, and they came up with a proposal that fits that announcement. And thankfully, they were awarded I think $800,000.
$800,000, but I was reading on their website, and it took them like 6 years.
Yeah, it's an incremental process sometimes. Yeah, and there's a lot of rejection in the grant writing process.
Yes.
You lose out on way more grants than you actually win.
Okay. Way more.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what are the advantages of like a nonprofit to seek the help of GrantLab in facilitating, a grant for them?
So we are actually really fortunate to be funded by a couple of our big local philanthropic institutions, and most of our local governments fund us. We have a pretty diversified funding model for how we do the work. I say all that to say, there's a lot of gratitude in the amount of trust that funders have in us to be able to do this work, but also because of that level of investment, almost all of our programs are free to the community. We don't charge people for
That's what I was going to say.
programs.
Do you have a fee?
No, there's no fee.
Yes.
But we try to educate people wherever we can, especially when it comes to our grant services work.
Right.
It's a very small team. There are 2 team members who work within our grant services department, but we scale our work through competitively procuring federal grant writers. Grant writers who have a proven track record of writing for different institutions, winning on behalf of communities.
Those are very hard to find,
They
by
are
the way.
so hard to find.
Yes.
We do a very, very thorough national search to identify the best of the best, so that when a partner comes to us and says, hey, GrantLab, we want to write for a HUD grant, right? U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development grant. We can look at our vendor portfolio and see who are the vendors that we have procured that write for these grants, so that we're like the matchmakers almost.
Yeah.
We understand what our partners need and want. We also have a vast vendor network that we can pair them with to write that grant together. Either we can do 3 tiers of grant writing. Maybe they have a really great grant writer on staff, and they just need a fresh pair of eyes to review the grant before they hit submit, make it a little bit stronger. So that's like the lowest tier of support. We can also co-write the application. So an in-house grant writer and one of our vendors can write the application together. Or if a nonprofit partner doesn't have capacity in-house, we can write the full application on their behalf. These vendors are for-profit vendors. They have specialized services, much like our lawyers and doctors who have specialized services. Grant writers are very, very lucrative positions in the community. And there's a high cost to their work.
To their work, of course.
It can cost, depending on what they're writing for, it can cost $20,000, $30,000 to write a single grant application, and there's no certainty you're going to win it.
Yeah.
There's no certainty.
Right.
But what the benefit of still opting for our vendors is we have the most qualified professionals who understand the process, know the terminology, know what the reviewers on the other side are looking for, to be able to give our community the best chance possible against other communities across the country. Because it's a competition.
It is.
It's a competition
of course,
against other communities who, by the way, have like 20, 30 years of a head start ahead of us. So this was the fastest way for us to bridge the gap by adding more vendors to our portfolio. And because we know, to my point earlier about data and the resources, we know our nonprofit partners don't have the resources to be able to pay for these high cost services. So we offset that cost up to 100%. We provide that quote to a partner. They're welcome to contribute $100 towards a $10,000 charge, or $0, or the full $10,000. And we have a range of partners who do any one of the above. But for our learning opportunities, they're all free right now. And some of them cost $1,500, $1,800, $2,000. But our funders are offsetting that cost because there's a reason why they want to invest in the nonprofit sector and people behind those organizations.
So if you are a nonprofit, well, you call yourself a nonprofit organization, but you still don't have the track record behind you, and currently you're only like a 501c4, I think it is. Are you able to qualify for something like that, or is it something that you help with, or do you have to have a proven track record?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't help organizations start, so we don't really work in the space of standing up more nonprofit entities. We really meet them a little bit further down the line once they've filed their paperwork, they're doing the work. You can actually do a lot even with a volunteer-run organization, right? To build up that track record and credibility. You can start to do the work and keep a record of it so that when local funding opportunities open up, that's when you dip into the historical work that you've done to put together your first application, right? Which then gives you more opportunities to build your track record to go for another funding source. So you just build upon it. It's very incremental in many ways.
Very good. Wow, it's really complicated.
It's very complicated.
No, people are telling me, oh, why did you apply for a grant? I said, well, I don't even know a grant writer, and how do I start? And I'm glad we're talking to you right now because it is, a complicated process. And so I'm glad that the GrantLab is here now. So how do nonprofits or any organization avail of your services?
We actually just went through a big transition in our website. So we just launched our new website a couple weeks ago. Full disclosure, we're working through some bugs right now, but that's a good starting point for folks. Folks who are interested in learning more about the nonprofit sector, about the data. We actually upload all of the different learning events and collaboration events that are coming up on our website, and folks can register directly there. And we post grant opportunities on our website.
Oh, cool.
Our team does a really thorough job of trying to identify what are the local grants, some of the national foundation grants, as well as, your typical federal grants. Right now there's a pretty big shift happening of how federal grants are going to be moving through. We're all waiting and seeing where the wind falls there. But our website, nevadaGrantLab.org, is the best place to go. Nevada spelled out. NEVADAGRANTLAB.org. It's not labs. A lot of people
yes.
say labs.
GrantLab. Nevada. It's
Nevada
NB.
GrantLab.
NevadaGrantLab.org. That's where you're gonna be able to find all the information that Divya had said. And so, if you're revising that, I'm gonna have to go look at.
Yeah, and to also clarify too, our service area, we primarily focus our efforts in servicing Southern Nevada nonprofits.
Southern Nevada. Oh, okay.
So we're not a statewide organization.
Okay.
We are very much hyper local here, born and raised here in Las Vegas. And we've been around for 5 years. We're growing our team steadily. We have 10 partners, 10 staff members who work within the institution, and we all bring very different skill sets and expertise to the organization as well.
So 10 staff. And do you have a brick and mortar space, or do you work
We do, but it's actually just like an administrative building. It's because we don't do direct service. We don't typically, broadly advertise our location.
Right.
We host different events. We host different convenings and stuff at our office. Actually, we just moved into this.
Speaking of that, what are some of the future activities that the GrantLab's gonna hold?
Yeah, one of the most immediate ones, we actually have really, really cool programs that we're launching this year, and keep an eye out for additional things to come online next year. But we have our program called Serve Well. Yep, it's primarily dedicated towards our faith-based community. So if you think about our faith-based community, they're an extension, almost like an extension of the social services sector, but we often don't think about them in that context.
You are correct.
But they're always answering the call to help their own congregation members, being great case managers in many ways to identify the needs and thereby the resources that folks need. So we have a learning opportunity, a 3-day intensive learning opportunity for faith-based leaders, up to 30 people. We're currently taking applications right now. We're partnering with Arizona State University Lodestar. They have an incredible program that they've developed, and they have been training faith leaders across the country. So we've contracted with them as our vendor to come teach that class. So that's one opportunity.
Okay. That's good. Okay, audience, do you hear that? The faith-based kind of like the faith-based community. So
some of the faith-based organizations actually even have a 501c3 entity associated with them, and those are actually the best organizations to think about applying for this program. Okay. Yeah, it's an expensive program, but it's free to the community. It's absolutely free. We also have, talking about grants, we have different tiers of grant writing learning opportunities. So we have one that's opening up next month called Proposal Writing Intensive. It's more for folks who have dabbled in grants before, but they're looking to upskill their work, more like the intermediary grant writers to really bolster their grant writing skills. So our internal team, as well as some of our grant writing vendors, we have a full intensive multi-week proposal writing intensive where folks can start, actually just go from reading a notice of funding availability all the way to like hitting submit on an application. Wow. And we're going to work with a live application locally, so folks have a real expertise there. Yeah. And then we're building towards something really exciting in November. We have our inaugural Southern Nevada Nonprofit Summit. It's a one-day event. It's almost similar to most other trade associations or different communities. They have their conferences, right, where professionals can learn and walk away with some of those tools that they can take back to their organizations. Historically, we haven't had that in Nevada, and definitely not in Southern Nevada. So we're hosting our inaugural nonprofit summit at Wynn Las Vegas. Really grateful to them for being our presenting sponsor for this event and hosting us at their at their beautiful casino on
Yes, it is
Tuesday,
beautiful
November
there.
18th. Yes.
November 18th, Tuesday, November. So is this like for Southern Nevada only, or?
Primarily Southern Nevada.
Okay.
Really encouraging our nonprofit partners, our funders, our policymakers, even the business community to get involved with us through the summit, whether they want to learn that day of or help support the actual work that we're doing by way of the summit. There are lots of opportunities to engage. The theme for this year is meeting the moment, building the capacity to lead, adapt, and deliver. So
Wow, that sounds very interesting. So this activity is going to be posted on your website?
on our website as well. Yep.
And how to apply and all that kind of stuff. So.
We launched our early bird registration on August 4th. So we're currently in the midst of our early bird ticket sales. They're extremely modestly priced. This is not meant to be a fundraising event for GrantLab. It's purely an affordable educational opportunity, which is why, a lot of our casino partners and industry partners are helping fund this work so that folks can attend at a $95 rate. Which is nothing.
Which is really okay. So November 18. What day is that?
Tuesday.
A weekend? It's a Tuesday.
Yeah,
Man, you're
it's
killing
a full
me.
day. I know, but it's so hard. Nonprofit partners are already working. It's not a traditional 8 to 5 job, so trying to minimize their involvement in extracurriculars as much as possible. And it's a professional development opportunity, right? So it's a conference almost, yeah.
Well, this is so informative. I'm so glad that you came because, all of us, or most people actually, don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Of how to go about applying for a grant, advantages, disadvantages, all the different resources which you already kind of mentioned. So what is your message to the organizations or individuals who are contemplating to apply for a grant?
Find the right partners. Sometimes you don't have to do this on your own. Actually, oftentimes you don't have to do this on your own. Finding other organizations who align with your mission, with the work that you're doing, and partnering for greater progress. Because if we're paying attention to what's happening at the federal level, and it trickles down to state, local, all of the other types of funders, everybody is going to prioritize partnerships. Everybody is thinking about how to strategically invest their dollars into organizations, and they're not going to fund 50 different organizations that all do similar things. They're going to fund maybe 5 that do that thing really, really well. So even if you're a small organization, you can absolutely partner with a slightly bigger entity, because maybe you're meeting a population that the bigger organization can't meet.
Partnering with a funder, a possible funder,
a bigger nonprofit.
A bigger nonprofit. Oh, a bigger nonprofit.
Yeah,
okay.
ACDC is a great example of that. Asian Community Development Council.
Correct.
They have built the nonprofit infrastructure internally so well that they're able to bring in local and national dollars to help meet the needs of our Asian American Pacific Islander community. And they partner with really small nonprofit organizations to really, really drive some of those resources to those like niche pockets in the community, right?
The ones who need it the most. Right.
Those same nonprofits are likely not never, but they're not yet at a stage to be eligible for some of these other dollars, but they can work with an institution like ACDC to leverage their reach and their expertise to still access some of those dollars that ACDC also wants to spend down for right reasons, right? So those kinds of partnerships are going to be really important. And also, there are 15,000 nonprofits on the books.
Wow.
If there's an opportunity to join an existing entity, perhaps in lieu of starting a new one, I would love for folks to think about who are the other nonprofits that are doing similar work. Maybe it's better to just support that work instead of starting a new entity, because it's a lot of work. It's still
Certainly is.
On the back end, it looks like a business in many ways, right?
Yeah.
You still need someone to run the show. You still need someone to handle the website, all of the communication efforts, do the grant writing, execute on the programs, report it out on those things. There is a lot of work on the back end that I think we often misunderstand.
Right.
And maybe sometimes a bit too quick to open a nonprofit. You can open as many nonprofits as you want.
Correct. But then, some of them, some of the people that actually come and say, okay, we're committed. But then, sometimes that commitment kind of falls in the back burner or say, oh, okay, I'm doing something else.
Yep.
But wow, that's
so
pretty
that's
awesome.
the parting message for today. If you're in the ideation stage of thinking about starting a nonprofit, maybe take a quick pause, do some landscape analysis of who else is doing similar work. And then if you're already further along that nonprofit journey, think about partners who you can join forces with, especially at this time, to do the work together now.
Very good.
So,
very
there.
good.
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Divya Narala, it was so good to see you again, and I really would like to thank you very much for joining us today, because this was a topic that's been in the back burner for a little bit, and we say we got to do something, and I'm so glad that we learned, and you went over there.
Yeah, I'm so happy. I've been in and around nonprofits my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I've only worked either for a government and institution or nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And truly, this is the first time in my life where I took a step back and have an entirely different, appreciation for the nonprofit sector because of how much organizations do in the community.
Yeah.
They're the invisible glue that keep the communities running, truly.
You are really so right about that.
Yeah, and it's a point of privilege to be able to join our partners on their journey to learn more, to develop their organizations, to be able to meet the needs of Nevadans at the end of the day.
It's a great satisfaction on your part, my part. I mean, I've been forever volunteering to whatnot, but this is so good to know. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And to the audience, actually, you can go to the GrantLab website, which is NevadaGrantLab.org.
Yes.
Okay,
did
.org. NevadaGrantLab.org, and you can find all their goals, their mission, the activities that they do. So,
and all the resources.
And the
There's so many
resources,
things that
yes.
you can learn even just interfacing with us on our website. So.
Very good, very good.
Thank you also for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to share.
Of course. So, anyway, thanks for explaining the GrantLab process. So, and to our audience, actually, we leave you with this. The Nevada GrantLab supports nonprofit organizations and their government partners to access and administer federal grants that benefit Nevadans. So seeking assistance in the grant process enables organizations to pursue projects and deliver services that might otherwise be unattainable without external funding. So grants offer critical resources to launch new initiatives, expand existing programs, and strengthen operational capacity. So they also serve as a catalyst for innovation, empowering organizations to explore new ideas and approaches that may not be viable through the traditional funding streams. So beyond financial support, grants can enhance an organization's credibility, fostering trust within the community and among potential partners, and an essential foundation for long-term collaboration and impact. So thank you very much for joining us today. Please be safe and be well. Until next time, this is Doris Bauer, your Philippine NARS host, signing off for now.
is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio.